everyone, welcome back to Jungle Citizens. Today we are going to show you the second of the 4 gardens that we said that we've been planting up. And we're also going to show you quite a cool treehouse that is right at the end of the garden. So yeah, let's start. We're going to start right here because this is quite a beautiful tree. It's very young, it's a very fast growing tree called Terminalia catappa, or Indian almond or badam it's known as here. It grows in this really kind of very interesting, staggered, almost like an umbrella type growth pattern. Now, the interesting thing about this, it's a tropical deciduous tree, but it loses its leaves throughout the year, 3 or 4 times. You can see actually this one here is coming off, and this one is coming off. You can see at the top there's quite a few yellow ones. Now, the useful thing about this is it drops loads of leaves, which means it creates lots of mulch, which covers the soil. So it's very often recommended as a tree to use in reforestation projects. Now, the one thing that must be said, this plant is not native to here. It is native to the Andaman Islands, and then it's native to that Southeast Asian region. So yes, it is a very useful plant to have in a restoration sense, but if it's not native to your area, you can probably find something better. So this is a very nice landscaping tree for sure. It gives this lovely, like, constant color change. It gives a very good shade, at least when it has its leaves. And it grows in this really beautiful pattern. So it's a very nice one for landscaping. Now, there's a lot of plants that are here that we haven't planted because John had already begun planting this place before we moved here. So things like this, they already existed. What does that look? There's a nice variegated something there. Is that a variegated heliconia? I think that might be a variegated heliconia. I don't remember planting it. That's the fun thing. When you go through such a mad move, you don't really know what's where. And anyway, that's interesting. So there's my first distraction of the day. For those of you that watch our videos will realize that happens quite a lot. And here you can see the fishtail palm, or bilomad, it's known as locally. It's a very, very beautiful palm. It's native to this area. It has a huge amount of really important biodiversity benefits because it gives out these amazing fruits, and those fruits get eaten by hornbills, by civet cats, by porcupines, by deer, pretty much you name it. If it's a fruit or a nut or a seed eater, it's going to love this plant. And as you can see, it's ornamentally beautiful. So this is a plant that you can buy in even in Europe, in cold areas of Europe, you can buy this in nurseries, albeit for indoors because the leaf is so beautiful. Here they grow to be very large. They can be up to 20 meters in height. They're brilliant. So they're one that we like. And also you can make jaggery and alcohol out of it. So let's move on. My feet, every time I go in here, look at that. I'm absolutely covered with this ant. This is actually an invasive ant. This is called a yellow crazy ant. I can't remember the Latin name, but they're actually incredibly terrible for biodiversity where they've become invasive because they outcompete all the other insects. Luckily, they don't bite, so I wasn't getting stung at that point. Right behind me, we have the Cyclanthus bipartitus. Those of you that watched the ripping out video might have seen a segment near the beginning of that where me and Clinton are literally fighting to get this thing out of the ground. I hope this is the hardest one. This is how it looks now. Granted, it's not looking so great at the moment. The leaves did get quite an aggressive chop, which perhaps was a bit over exuberant by the chopper. And still, that said, you can see we've got new leaves coming here. We've got new leaves coming here and here and here, and down here and here. So all in all, this is a very happy plant. This is a plant that gets a decent amount of shade, but also gets a decent amount of light. It seems to have found a really nice spot. You can see here on the ground, we've got this lovely, look at this. This is one of the components of the soil that we sometimes put in, and if we use it, it's really amazing. It smells incredible as well. It's substrate that's used to grow button mushrooms from a local factory. And it's fantastic as one of the inputs, but this is no good unless you are able to cover it with mulch. So this is where the badam tree comes in, because it starts dropping it with mulch, and that then covers the soil. So because the soil here is good, it means that the plants here are doing fairly well. We should just have a little look in here, because there's some mushrooms. Look, I don't know what they are. I would presume they're one of the coprinids. Anyway, these guys are really amazing because they help us to build the soil and get amazing nutrients accessible to the plants very quickly. We'll take a little look at this. This is a cinnamon. Cinnamomum, I don't know exactly which one, whether it's verum or zeylanicum. There's quite a few species of cinnamon. Now, obviously, cinnamon is the plant that we know. Oh, you can see the little caterpillar on there. See the little caterpillar? And actually, there's an egg here as well. I don't know if you can see that egg.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So one of the great things about cinnamon is that they're a really, really important host plant for many different butterfly species. So cinnamon species are native to this area. I think we have maybe 3 species that you find in Goa, although only one of them is a little bit lower. The rest of them are at a bit of a higher altitude. So there's lots of butterflies that really, really like this plant. Of course, it's a cinnamon, which means that you can harvest the cinnamon also. The first thing is that the leaves are the Indian bay leaf. So this gets used in curries or biryanis or anything that might need a bay leaf. The stem on some of them is really delicious. This one is so nice, a little bit sweet. But to actually get the cinnamon, you need this plant to be growing probably at least 10-12 years. It has to grow all the way up, and then you have to cut it somewhere along the main stem. So here we have 2 stems coming up. Maybe in 10 years, once this stem is really this kind of a thickness, you then cut the entire tree, and then you're able to use the bark, and that bark becomes the cinnamon. Now, if you do it properly, the tree itself will coppice, which means that it will come back up. So it doesn't kill the tree, but of course it is a massively long process. So for people that are growing cinnamon, it's a really hard job, and that is why it's also so expensive if you get a high quality one. So spend a moment thinking for the farmers that are living out in these forests and trying their best to grow these kinds of things, because they're the luxuries that we are able to enjoy as a result. So now we're going to take you over to this side, and then we'll take a little look. Now, as ever with our gardens, we're showing you the reality. We haven't come in this morning and given it a trim or a clean, so you'll see it exactly how it is. I can already see there's a little bit of work to do here with some weeding. But here you can see a whole bunch of those heliconias that we ripped out from our last place that are now starting to come back. Some of them are doing better than others, but you can see there's a new leaf coming. There's a very nice papaya coming there. Lots of these guys coming. These are really, really annoying. I think they're called tiger nuts or something like that. So these need to be taken out. This is not grass. And this is also, I believe, an invasive to this area. But it was bought many thousands of years ago as a food crop, actually. This little tuber here you can eat. But in Africa, they've sort of selected them to have larger tubers, if I'm not wrong. These are quite small. Anyway, you can see lots of these. These are the Chelacostus that we stuck all into the ground. We had loads of them. So what we want to do here is we want to cover the soil as quickly as possible with green things in order to stop all of these plants coming up, because these kind of weed plants, they thrive on light. And this is an environment where if we get a canopy of trees, very quickly the light disappears, and then you create a forest environment. Hello, yes. This is one of our dog friends here, and he's a crazy dog. I mean, you can't really do anything to stop him from wanting pets and love with him. So yes, we've got heliconias there, we've got a ziphidium there in the back. You can also see there's a whole bunch of marks that we've chucked in everywhere, and very soon there's going to be a sprinkler system here, and when that happens we can plant even more things, because they're really going to grow very, very quickly, which would be amazing. So then you can see there's an alocasia. That's an alocasia macrorhizos, just an ordinary one, I think. Those guys get very big leaves. And then here we have one of the plants that you've seen very often with us, although this one's looking a bit unsexy, it must be said. But there's a lovely new leaf coming. This is our Xanthosoma sagittifolium. And there's another one here, look. So these guys, with a little bit of time, they really have the ability to grow into massive plants. And speaking of massive plants, there is one right here. Ta-da! So this is actually still a young xanthosoma, and now obviously it's the dry season, so these guys are starting to sort of get a little bit smaller in their leaf size because the leaves lose a lot of water. So you can see at the moment it's covered in dew because it's the morning time, but by the daytime it becomes scorchingly hot with very dry wind. So the leaves slowly start getting smaller with time, and yet still we have that kind of a size leaf, which is awesome. And next year, this leaf will be double in size. So they really size up very, very quickly. This is an absolute gem of a plant. Now here in India, this is actually used as a food crop. And also in Latin America, it's used as a food crop. So it's not really considered as a garden plant. It's got a very, very thick tuber, and the Portuguese brought it here from Brazil hundreds of years ago. So for hundreds of years, this has been considered a food crop, even by tribal communities here. And the tubers are sold at this time of year, at the end of the monsoon, when the plant has basically maximized the size of its tuber. It shrinks down the leaves, and then that tuber gets eaten. It's not really considered as an ornamental plant, which I find really mad because it's just so beautiful. So for me, this is one of the most underrated ornamentals that we have. Both this one, Xanthosoma sagitifolium, and the other one, Xanthosoma nigrum, which we're going to show you in a bit. I don't think we have any massive ones like this, but still. Let's have a look over here, because we have one of our Alocasia stingrays. So it's doing quite well. You can see the leaves are starting to size up. Yeah, very good. Again, need to do a little bit of weeding in this area. Another Xanthosoma sagitifolium in the background. So we're just going to jump in here and take a quick look at how these anthuriums are doing. And actually here, this is very cool to see. Look at this. This is a Polyalthea fragrans. It's a huge evergreen forest tree that's endemic to this region, and it's got two lovely new leaves coming, which means it's very happy here under this kind of nurse shade. This is a shisham. This is a rosewood tree. And that's also native to this area. So great to see these two doing well, because that's what's going to give us the canopy in the long term. So behind me again I have a stingray. To my right I have a small Cyclanthus bipartitus. Then I've got a stenanthe here, and then I've got a little bell marks here. And then what I came for in the first place was this guy. This is one of our, as you can see, quite battered anthurium hybrids. It looks to be one of the anthurium magnificum hybrids. And, well, let's see what happens. It does have some new roots coming. It is in a fairly good place, but that new leaf has got a lot smaller. So one way that you can tell that an anthurium is stressed or is perhaps sick or dying is that the leaves consistently get smaller. That's not good news. You want leaves to be getting bigger or to be staying the same size. So we'll have to keep an eye on this one. If we take a look over here, let's see what this one is doing. And there's a new leaf coming out by the looks of it, but yeah. Let's see. We'll have to keep an eye out on them. Over here we have again a bunch more of the Xanthosoma sagitifolium, and you can see them really starting to take up space now, which is exactly what we want, because where they are covering the soil, you don't have many of the plants coming from underneath it, which is great. And you can see again a lovely clump of Xiphidium there, starting to get really big and impactful, which is cool. So here we've got the Xanthosoma nigrum. And there's a better one in the background that I should go to if we're really trying to show you what they look like. You can see this guy's starting to size up quite nicely now. Put that leaf that side because it looks better. And really a beautiful plant. It's like the sagitifolium, but the leaf is darker. The petiole is this kind of blue-black colour. Very, very stunning plant, really amazing. So when we go over here, we can see that we have a bit of a problem here because we haven't got anything planted. So this section is now going to have to get planted up, preferably with some quite high impactful plants in the background, and then with lower things in the foreground. You can see there's a coconut in front of me. Again, that's one of the many plants here that we didn't plant. And we come over here and we see an Alocasia clypeolata, which again is one of the more kind of rugged Alocasias. It doesn't get massive like the macrorhizos or the stingray, but it still becomes a really nice plant. And yeah, very easy to care for. Here we have the Chalocostus. It's very good to eat and very crunchy, as I'm sure you can hear. It tastes a little bit like a sour apple, and it's known as the insulin plant because it is something that is used to regulate insulin, especially in diabetics. So it's a really nice plant to eat, and it also looks really nice. It grows in this very typical kind of Costa spiral. As you can see, it gives out a really nice red flower, and it has these really nice kind of darker purple stems also, as you can see. So these actually become 1.5, even 2 meters in height if they're really happy, and they can take really good space. So if you have a corner of your garden that's kind of a little bit shady, a little bit sunny, and you don't know what to do with it, if you chuck a couple of these in it, very, very quickly you'll have a really beautiful, very impactful, year-round, green with flowers, edible corner, which is pretty cool. Right, then over here we have one of our colocaceas. I couldn't even tell you which kind of colocasia it is, I don't know, they have all these crazy names, Dark Midnight or Black Magic or Joker, or I don't know, something like that. It's one of these. I'm not very good with the colocasia varieties. This again was a gift from someone, but it looks beautiful. So these guys, they like lots of water, so it really is a one that's better off in a really kind of wet area. You could even chuck them on the edge of your pond. They don't mind being in a little bit of water. And yeah, they make a really nice impact. The more light they have, the darker the leaf gets, and these leaves can get to be a reasonable size like this. So obviously with the move, these kind of soft leaf things, they really struggle. So a lot of the leaves died back. You can see that would have been a far larger leaf with a far longer petiole. And yet they're happy, they're coming back. There's a new leaf coming as well. So hopefully they'll survive this year. They'll end up probably losing all the leaves. There'll be just a corn in the ground, and then when the monsoon comes, this will erupt with all manner of them. There'll be dozens. So that's pretty cool. And then we're going to have to flip all the way over to the other side, because over here, amongst the heliconia, so actually this is the heliconia beehive. This is the unknown heliconia that we have, red one. We'll put a photo in the thing. This one gets a lot larger. It gets to be about 4.5 meters. And we've had this plant, goodness, 2018, 2017, late 2017. So it's nearly 8 years we've had this plant now, and it's planted in a whole bunch of different areas. Then in front, we have one of the ornamental bananas, and it is super duper duper happy. There's another smaller one coming here, and there's another baby coming out there, and there's another one on the other side. So there's 3 pups and then this main plant coming, which means it's going to be flowering soon. And you can see, yeah, a bunch more that we've planted around. So again, this is the very large heliconia, but this is an ornamental banana, and these are again heliconias. So these ornamental bananas, they give the most amazing flower. We might be able to show you an old one over there, but they're brilliant nectar givers. They are also used as a bath by the sunbirds, which are like the hummingbirds of the old world, because the petals open like this, the dew collects in there, and then that becomes a perfect little cup for the sunbirds to have a bath in, which is pretty cool. So down here we've got one of these, I don't even know what it is, I think it's a macrorhizos hybrid of some sort. New leaf is coming there. Again, very, very dark. This gets to be a very big plant as well, and it doesn't mind getting a reasonable amount of light. We're going to put that to the test, because all of the places that I've planted it so far, the light has always been kind of diffused bright, and here it gets a good maybe 8 hours of sun during the day. So we'll have to see with a few of these plants how they'll do. I'm sure the ornamental bananas will do fine. Behind you have an Alocasia odora, or an odora hybrid, I'm not entirely sure. I think it's an odora hybrid. So you can see again the old leaf, that's still a forest leaf from our last place, and this one also, and this one also, but these new leaves that are coming are looking quite good. It is sending out flowers, and again we're basically putting the light thing to the test because it gets a huge amount of light here. So we'll have to see how it does, but for the moment it seems to be doing okay. There's lots of pups coming out from the main mother, which is good as well. So now let's go down here. Right, so over here we again find ourselves with a bunch of the Xanthosoma sagitifolium, and actually we'll have to see, maybe a couple of these we'll have to remove depending on how happy this Alocasia pseudosanderiana gets. These Alocasias do get very big, but they don't really get close to the size of these Xanthosomas, so I think that one will just end up getting swallowed. So we might have to move either the Alocasia or a couple of the Xanthosoma somewhere else. Caladium also in there. I don't really know how it got there, to be honest. It might have just somehow arrived in the soil, I don't know. There's another stingray there. And again, you can see it's starting to get its groove on. So you can see all the leaves. This leaf, and then this leaf, and then this leaf. They're all getting bigger. So that's a very good sign. That means that it's very happy where it is. And where we are now is an area that gets flooded occasionally by the old irrigation system that's used to basically harvest or grow the rice paddy crop. So this area just a few days ago was actually flooded. The whole ground is wet, and that is going to be an incredible thing for all of these Alocasias, Xanthosomas, Colocasias. They're going to go absolutely nuts with that. So the only question is how much light they're getting, and is it going to be too much for them? And we'll be able to give you the answer to that in a couple of months when it's the dry season. So you can see we've got again a bunch of the ornamental bananas coming through here and here. They're looking really nice now. These are all plants that have grown from babies since we arrived, so they don't know the jungle. Because they don't know the jungle, they're perfectly happy here. This is one that did know the jungle, and it's looking a lot sadder, but we've kept it just because it has a flower, which means that we have certain nectar, like bees and butterflies and things coming to it. You can see that little cup that I was talking about earlier. That's what makes the little water reservoir that the plants use. And actually there is one stingless bee that's just looking to come, see? There you go. Just to prove the point, that's a stingless bee. And it's coming for the nectar because this gives lots of nectar. So this is the pink one. We've got purple and we've got orange also. And of course, bananas, there's hundreds of species, and many of them have all sorts of different kinds of flowers, which is pretty cool. So another one here, this is one of the ones that, again, we moved from the forest. That's why it's so big. But it hadn't started flowering. Now, the thing with bananas is they only flower once and then they die. After that, they die. But the true bananas in the Musa family, they do pups. So they send out babies from the ground. So this is the oldest one, and then you've got this one, and then you've got the new baby coming, as you can see. But this guy is still doing quite happy and probably is going to give us a flower quite soon. So you can see there's Dieffenbachias everywhere. These were not planted by us, but very, very nice plant to create a lot of space. They give you a big leaf, very easy to look after. Indoors, outdoors, wet, dry. They're pretty easy, to be honest. And they give you a lovely leaf. Here behind is a pothos. And this is one thing I noticed the other day that I got super duper excited about. If you remember back to our forest walks, we were showing you this guy all the time. Now this is a sign that this area used to be a really proper forest, and this guy is still alive because of that Dieffenbachia giving it shade. So that is a really incredible plant to be finding here, because it shows us what direction we need to be moving in. The direction that this place wants to be moving in is a proper forest, which is cool. Coming behind me, you can see there's a little bougainvillea here with the flowers coming. Also not one that we planted, but very beautiful tropical plant, but very common, found in many gardens. This is the Alocasia portii, and you can see it's still massive. But the new leaf that came out since we arrived is quite a lot smaller than the other one. So it's obviously gone through quite a lot of shock. It's in a very different place. But it's still quite happy. It didn't drop all of its leaves, and there's now a new leaf coming, so we'll have to see how big this new leaf is. Hopefully this new leaf will be bigger than the last leaf, and if that's the case, then we're again moving in the right direction. We'll have to keep our fingers crossed. And it should be a plant that is really enjoying the flooding reality. And if you take a look at the size of this tuber, or the trunk, it's almost turning into a portii tree. Like, that is massive. Massive, massive, massive. So I've never seen a portii that big. And unfortunately, it's still not giving us any babies, which is a shame because I only have two portii. One is very small and one is this one. I'd quite like to have more because they make an incredible impact in a landscape garden, and yet it's not giving me any babies, which is very annoying. So here again, we've got the ornamental bananas. Here we have something that's really not doing well. And I wonder if it's not doing well because of that flooding, that it was flooded for 2 days and this plant just basically can't deal with it. So I think this is one we're going to have to replant, which is a shame because it would have been very beautiful there. But anyway, that's a casualty. We had filmed here the other day and we'll be able to put in a video of where it looked good. Here we have the heliconias again. Look at that red coming in the stem, super beautiful. I think this is the heliconia behi, and these guys are super happy. And you can see there's a little Chelacostus growing in there as well. So this is an entire row of heliconia behi. I should mention the treehouse in the background. So we said at the beginning of this video that we're going to show you around a treehouse. That's the treehouse we're talking about. It's been built into a banyan tree by our friend who owns this property, and he's just about finished it, and he's now starting to rent it out. So if you want to stay in a treehouse in Goa, then check out the link in the description, because we are going to be putting the link there for the Airbnb. Oh, there's a turkey there. Oh, there's lots of turkeys. So this is also a part of a working farm complex. And one of the birds that there are lots of here is turkeys. So just one quick note about this channel here behind me. We were saying that it flooded earlier, and we'll put some pictures in of the flooding event a couple of days ago. This is the old Portuguese irrigation system that was put in to flood fields in the dry season to allow for the rice paddy to be grown throughout the year. So it's a very old system that's using sluice gates and gravity essentially to move it all over. And it's a really awesome piece of engineering, of water engineering. And what it means is that these areas get flooded periodically. It only happens once every 7 or 10 days, we're told, because all the other farmers around need it as well. But it's certainly something that we can try and use to our advantage. Just want to mention behind me here quickly, at the moment, we've got these pots of pothos, which by all means is an indestructible plant, but in this situation you can see even the pothos is really struggling. Now that's because firstly, of course it's in a pot, which means it only has a very small amount of root space. Secondly, the pot is hanging in the air and is being hit by light all day, which means that this pot heats up, and as the pot heats up, it's heating up the roots, which is a very weird thing for a plant to have happen to it. At least its ground roots. And because it heats up, it evaporates all the water very quickly, which means that you have to water it, and within a few hours it will be dry. So if you have this kind of a thing in your garden, the best thing that you can do is plant vining creepers at the bottom on either side, and then allow those to vine up. So we have these two different type of creepers. One is like the pothos, which wants to attach itself to a tree, which is the same as an anthurium or a philodendron or a syngonium or whatever. They have these roots that attach them to the tree. And one is more of a vining creeper, which is a plant that basically wraps itself around things and then uses that to get up. So in this kind of an environment, the preference really, because of the thin nature of this, is to put a kind of a vining plant up it. So that's something that we're going to have to do. We'll have to put some of those plants in on either side to allow for this to come up. Now, we said earlier that we were going to show you the treehouse. The treehouse is behind us, but this is the little jacuzzi room, chill out room, the romance room, I don't know, whatever. But it's a very beautiful little thing that we'll have to show you, and you can just see in the background the lovely view. The other cool thing about this treehouse is that it's run entirely on solar panels. So you can see the panels behind me, even the hot water behind in the background there, you can see the hot water heater. So that's a solar powered water heater and solar panels to power the entire place. Let's see. Welcome to the banyan treehouse. So you have a TV, you have a soundbar, and then you have this incredible view. So it's very similar to the view from the jacuzzi room, just this incredible expanse of floodland. In the monsoon, this area all floods. There's actually a little lake here as well. So it's really an incredibly beautiful space. And you have everything you need to spend a few days. We'll now go upstairs to the master bedroom. And now we'll get back to plants. So you can see a bunch of garden plants have been put here. A lot of these are plants that we haven't planted ourselves, but we have put in a couple of heliconias in different spots. And behind here, because it gets a good amount of shade all day, it's actually turned into a really decent planting area. And now that it's a radish. Don't do this, guys. Don't ever find something that you don't know what it is and then taste it. But I'm right, I think it's a radish. I've done this a few times with plants that have oxalates in them, and it's the worst experience. So really not recommendable to do that. If we just jump around here and have a look, this gets a lot of light right now, but it will get behind that tree in the long run. I do worry, though, a little bit that the sun will keep drifting more this way, and then we'll get more and more light. Let's see. So here you can see a silver cloud, philodendron silver cloud. And it's also doing very well. It seems to have found a good spot. There's a massive new leaf coming there, see? So this is one of the bigger kind of top cuts that we had, that we put in, and you can see it's pretty happy. It's going to take a little bit of time to adjust. It definitely has more light than it's used to, and we're going to have to figure that out as the summer comes, because it could be quite a challenge for it. And then here we've got philodendron giganteum. That's the absolutely massive giganteum that you guys have seen already, and it's doing well. It again is taking a little bit of time to readjust itself. But you can see down here, there's a whole bunch of sort of green, happy roots, which means it's doing quite all right. It's getting itself into the ground, into the soil. And you can see behind me, there's a whole bunch of these ferns coming. And that's always a good sign that this area keeps fairly moist and cool and humid. And this one's interesting because it has this very crazy white powder underneath. You can see another mushroom here as well. So this is all the stuff that is helping to turn any organic matter in and around the soil floor into soil. So mushrooms are almost always your friend. Not always, because you do sometimes have fungal pathogens, of course, but in a vast majority of cases, if you've got these kind of things coming up in your garden or even in your pots, they're friends. Here we've got a monstera. Now, honestly, I couldn't tell you what monstera it is at the moment because it's in the juvenile leaf phase, but it's coming from an adult, so it's kind of going to become adult quite quickly. I couldn't tell you if it's an esqueleto or if it's an adansonii or if it's a laniata. We'll just have to see as it grows up. But it's come from one of those big, chunky mid-sections of the monstera, and hopefully it will start growing up this treehouse really nicely. You can see there's another silver cloud in front, you probably noticed that. And then here we have a blue pea. Now again, it's a viner, which means that it needs something thin to grow up like this. We might have to put a piece of string up or something to let it go up. But the interesting thing about blue pea is that it has an edible flower. It could have been a nicer flower, but anyway, these flowers, when they're looking a little bit nicer, are things that you can put into your salads or you can put into your tea, especially this section at the end. There's an ant on it. It's normally super sweet, but this one's run out of sweetness. Maybe we try this one. This one will have also run out of sweetness. Anyway, that section's normally super sweet. And the blue pea itself, especially the more blue color. So actually many of there's many different colors of flower in this blue pea, but the very, very dark blue one you can put into tea and it will actually make the tea a blue color. Maddest thing about that is if you add a squeeze of lemon to it, it will then go pink like that. Madness. And on that bombshell, we will call it a day for today. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next one, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Ta-da! So, what else do I want to say about the tree? That's it. What do they chase you?